Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of the five-time MLS Cup champion LA Galaxy. And now, here are your hosts, Josh Guesman and Wendy Thomas.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Josh Guesman and Miss Wendy Thomas back with you after a week off, a wonderful week off for me. I don't know if it was a wonderful week off for everybody. Let's bring on Wendy and see how her week was, at least a little bit. Wendy, how's it going? Are we surviving so far?
My week, I can guarantee you, is definitely better than most of Sebastian Lletget's.
Wait, I wanted to live in a world just for a little while, and I think I joked about this on Twitter a little bit, Wendy, but I wanted to live in a world just for a little while where Sebastian Lletget still just had a sprain, and we were expecting him to be out just a matter of days. It wasn't even weeks. It was just going to be days. He might miss the Vancouver game, but he was going to be ready for that Montreal game. No worries.
Those are called alt facts. I don't know if you've been following the news, that those are alternative facts, but we don't unfortunately live in an alternative reality. Sometimes I really wish we did.
Yeah, I think it would make some things a little bit better. This might be one of those things. But it's interesting, especially whenever you see what, how it all happened and how everything went down. But I mean, before we even get to that, we're going to talk about the RSL game, but we can't, you can't, it's like you can't ignore the elephant in the room for very long, but you have to talk about Sebastian Lletget, who I have never, it's rare that a player's injury affects reporters sort of, the same as fans. And I would say that I think most reporters who were covering the Galaxy and have been talking to Sebastian Lletget all this preseason, and you've been getting all this build up for him, Wendy, and everybody I think was ready for him to be the guy. And,
right.
And
I think
he was building towards that.
He figured heavily into LA Galaxy plans this season, and based on the first 3 games, he perhaps along with Van Dam has been the most impactful player for the LA Galaxy. He's really been helpful. He's been covering defensively. He's been trying to create. He's been doing a lot of work. Losing him is a huge blow to the LA Galaxy.
Oh, gigantic. And I was trying not to even minimize that. I mean, somebody said, so they were trying to say, Robbie Rogers and him being out and how big that is for the LA Galaxy. And I'm like, listen, there's nobody bigger than the Galaxy, and nobody who I think everybody expected to have such a year. I mean, Kevin Baxter said it on the Monday show about 1,000 times, and he was never wrong when he said it, but everybody expected Sebastian Lletget to have the breakout year. This was his year.
Yeah, I mean, and the heartbreaking thing is that this comes at a crucial point in his career, in addition to that of the LA Galaxy, because he got his first call up to the national team in January. The game wherein he was injured is the game where he scored his first international goal for the U.S. men's national team. And you could almost feel, based on how he's been performing for the national team, that he was on the precipice of, turning the corner and becoming a central player for not only the Galaxy, but also the national team. And so, at least from my perspective, it was heartbreaking to hear that the injury is a Liz Frank fracture.
Yes. Liz Frank injury or fracture, they're interchangeable now that Dr. Josh has read up on Wikipedia and other sites to learn about what a Liz Frank injury is. But yes, they're interchangeable. So Liz Frank fracture, Liz Frank injury, same exact thing.
Yeah, and that is heartbreaking because it means he's going to be out for half a season, and who knows if it's going to be longer based on rehabilitation.
Right.
Or, because look at Jesse Zardes. Jesse Zardes hurt his foot towards the end of last season and has spent 4 months, 6 months in recovery, was re-injured before the start of this season, and it's essentially been about 6 months since he's played competitive soccer. So who knows how long Sebastian Lletget will really be out.
Yeah. I mean, you can never, ever predict these things. I think we learned that from Zardes. I think we learned it from Robbie Rogers. You can't predict how injuries are going to go. You can assume and look at the general timeframes. And listen, Sebastian Lletget is young. This is his first, it seems like, major injury. And funny that it's major to a very minor part of a very minor but very important part of the foot. Like, it's a small.
Right.
This isn't like his foot got snapped in half.
Yeah, no, it's a teeny tiny little bone in his foot.
Yeah, yeah. The tarsus, by the way, if you wanted to know. So listen, this Liz Frank injury, and one of the reasons that I sort of studied up on it was because we got reports, and it was even I think after the
Yes.
U.S. men's national team game that it was
Yes.
just a sprain, right? And then
Yeah, everyone said it's a minor injury. The LA Galaxy fans can breathe a sigh of relief.
that's what everybody said.
Not so fast. Not
Yeah,
so fast.
not so fast, my friend.
Not so fast.
No, but then you look, and even the Monday. So Monday afternoon, I believe, is when Sebastian Lletget was scheduled to have his scan. And Monday morning, Kevin Baxter, Adam Serrano were both reporting that still it's a sprain. There's a scan scheduled for later tonight, but they're expecting it's just a sprain. And then it went from a sprain to out to 4 to 6 months, and people are scratching their heads saying, "How can this happen? How can you have that happen?" And I went and read up on the Liz Frank injury. Basically, went to the American Association of Orthopedics and to try to figure out exactly what it was in the definition. And it is it's this bone. And the injury itself is basically an injury to the link between the feet bones, right? So the foot bones, all those individual toes that you have are all bones, and they all link back to this one bone called the tarsus, and the tarsus links up to sort of, I think, your higher ankle. If I'm sure people are going to be like, who are actual medical experts, will be like, you have no idea what you're talking. But I'm close. I'm close. I stayed at the Holiday Inn Express last night. All right, so I'm close enough to what it is, but the tarsus is this bone at the top, and that's where the connection is. And literally in the diagnosis of that injury, it says it will present itself as just a normal sprain, and until the swelling goes down and you can get a good scan on it, you're going to think it's a sprain. And for people who aren't Sebastian Lletget, like Wendy, you and I, we would do this, in our Sunday leagues or whenever we're playing or stuff like that. We would do this, and we would be like, "Oh, it's just a sprain. It's okay, not a problem." And like 2 weeks later, we'd be like, "I still can't put like any weight on my foot. What's wrong?" And you would go into the doctor, and they'd be like, "Yeah, it's because you got a Liz Frank injury and you broke your foot." Right, but it's still it looks like a sprain, and even to the person you saw, Lletget got, I think, injured in the 15th minute, didn't come out to the 18th minute. He was hobbling around for a little bit. He was surviving. So
he's a fighter.
So it presents as a sprain, and until you have experienced doctors who actually look at the scan and look at it, they can see like sometimes it's a spreading out of like the bones from the tarsus. So it can be as mild as Sebastian Lletget broke one bone in one of his basic toes as it reaches up to this middle bone, the tarsus, and it could be as little as that. I don't know what the exact it could be that all five of the connecting bones are broken and that they spread out from the tarsus, and that's the only way you're able to see it. It could be that there's even a bone that connects to the tarsus that could be the problem as well. I mean, there's all sorts of things that rotate around this one bone, and everybody's feeling the top. At least I am. I'm feeling the top of my foot right now, just to like try to
Why do
do
we
it.
have so many bones in our feet?
Why do
It
we have-
seems superfluous. Why on earth do we need so many bones? Jesse Zardes breaks his foot. Sebastian Lletget breaks his foot. It all just seems superfluous that we have this many bones.
I think you have a legitimate complaint, and I wouldn't say that you would be wrong in saying. I mean, you look at your hand and just the bones that are in your hand. Oh man, anything can break at any time. That's the bottom line for this. And some people I saw.
Josh is all of a sudden grappling with his mortality.
I am. It's all fragile. All right, we're only here for a little bit. Everybody enjoy it while you can.
Enjoy it while you can.
But they even say like the low impact. We call this a low impact injury in terms of how they diagnose it, because like a high impact injury would be a car crash or some sort of high speed, high force injury. But this is a low impact injury, and with low impact, it's even harder to see this. So I don't think there's any vast conspiracy, especially whenever you go to the the American Association of Orthopedics, and it literally says will present as a sprain, and that's what we were told until the scan came through, and you get Sebastian Lletget out 4 to 6 months. Now, I am an optimistic person, Wendy, and I think that Sebastian Lletget could be back in training in like 3.5 to 4 months. Just because one, his girlfriend's a Power Ranger, so that's gonna help.
She's gonna deploy some magical powers. Is that what you're suggesting?
I wish my Power Ranger knowledge was deeper at this particular moment.
I assume they're superheroes, aren't they?
They are superheroes.
Are they crime fighters or are they superheroes?
They are superheroes that fight crime, I would say, but they fight mean like people, right? There's people on here who are smashing their head against the like computer monitor or whatever they're listening to.
We are so out of our depth. Neither of us know anything about the Power Rangers.
I know, I think it was during my time. I mean, realistically, I think that I should have watched the Power Rangers, but that was not in my wheelhouse for whatever reason. Now, if we want to talk about Wizards of Waverly Place, I think I can handle myself, pretty well. Or Phineas and Ferb, which I was watching well before I ever had a son. So if we want to talk about those things, I'm in my
Well, you
desk.
have a son and you still play with Legos, correct?
If I didn't see, the question always is, would I play with Legos if I didn't have a son? And the answer is yes, I probably still would.
And, sir, for the record, if you did not have a son, you would still go to Disneyland on a regular basis. True?
If it was less expensive, yes, absolutely. Because I was going there before. Actually, I think because I have a son, I don't go to Disneyland as much anymore. That's how it is. So yes, that's me in a nutshell. So all those things. But anyway, no, I think I feel like the positive energy that this man puts into the universe is going to come back and help him. And I think that the fact that everybody realistically and whether this is completely off base or not, but he's a good guy. He deserves to not have this be 6 months. All right. So
I think this is a fantastic exemplar of how a person's perspective and overall philosophy reflects what they project into the future vis-a-vis their players, their team, etc. For example, with respect to Zardes being injured, with respect to Lletget being injured, you generally are a very sunny, optimistic person. And, I generally am maybe a bit more skeptical, a bit more prone to rumination about issues, and, prone to thinking that the LA Galaxy are going to be headed for doom and gloom. I think this is, in some ways, more of a reflection of the attitude that we bring to our soccer life and, who we are as people, because I fear that not only is he going to be out for 6 months, but there's going to be extra rehabilitation, that it's going to be like a Zardes situation where initially it's reported that, initially when Zardes was injured, it was reported he could be back for the playoffs. And I was like, there's no way he's going to be back for the playoffs, first of all. But he's not even back, and it's almost April.
Yeah. No, well, to be fair, those are two separate injuries, but you're right. There was all this hope and optimism that he would be. Look at both sides. Last year, he breaks his foot at the end of August. There's he could be back for the playoffs. He was probably borderline of whether or not he was ever going to be real close to coming back. The Galaxy get bounced out probably earlier than they would like to. I know earlier than a lot of LA Galaxy fans would like to, but probably where they deserve to get bounced if we're painting the room the color that we think it is.
Decidedly so. Yes. I would say decidedly so.
Okay, so you get all that. And then he's relatively healthy after that, and then he goes to January camp and he has a knee problem, and so then the same thing plays out again. Oh, he's going to be ready for opening day. It's going to be real close to whether or not he's going to be borderline close to opening day. It's going to be real close to opening. No, it's not opening day, but it's going to be real. It was, and I think that's the sunny side of the PR of sports, which is, oh, don't worry, the player that we said we're going to build our team around is definitely going to be ready for, the beginning of the season. Okay, well, it's going to be really close to the beginning of the season. Oh, he's not quite ready yet, and now here we are, 4 games in, and realistically, I think you should expect Gyasi Zardes to be available for this game, so he will be back, I think. But
it's interesting when you characterize it as PR. I think about that a lot in terms of MLS when people accuse it of being really opaque with respect to how it reports and lacking transparency. And I'm always wondering, to what extent is obfuscation of information which is otherwise reportable, to what extent is that a public relations exercise, and to what extent is that deception?
Yeah, no, you say deception, and I think that they would argue, competitive advantage, competitive disadvantage, that type of thing. It's like, do you want to tell the other team that Gyasi Zardes isn't going to play in the opening game, that type of thing? And realistically,
the alternative, though, you just risk outraging your fans when its public reports are released saying that Gyasi Zardes will be available after X many weeks, and it turns out that it takes twice or 3 times as long. You also risk, to a certain extent, alienating your fan base when you report misinformation.
I think that's true, and I don't know that there's ever a direct, and I'll be honest with this, I don't think there's ever a direct report that is a lie in terms of, hey, we're telling you this, but it's actually the opposite. Usually, it's a lack of information that has to be put together by reporters to try and figure out things. And when you don't have all the information, you can lead yourself to assume possibly this could be the case, And so that's usually how I find it, is that it's never a full-out deceit. And it's never,
I think it is rarely a lie, but that I think there's probably been a few instances where it's a flat out lie, but most of the time there is at least an element of truth, or at least hopeful truth in what they're reporting, i.e., that it is
There you go.
what they hope the outcome will be.
And I think it's always, and I think as a reporter, and I need to get better at this. Kevin is very good at this. It's the way to answer the question that gets the response where there's no wiggle room to let somebody out of it, right? So like it's like when you ask, if Robbie Rogers has been, and this is an example Kevin gave, is if you ask, has Robbie Rogers been in the hospital in the last, has I know that, or what I think we said was, has Robbie Rogers been in the hospital last month? No, Robbie Rogers has not been in the hospital last month. And it's like, okay, so you think you're covered there because you got 30 days, right? And you're like, within the 30 days, Robbie Rogers hasn't been in the hospital. But what you don't know is that he was actually in the hospital, 35 days or 40 days before that. And that's realistically so they can get around telling you the truth and at least telling you the whole story. They're not lying, but they're not giving you all the information. And so I think as the reporters as you get more and more skilled reporters, and I'm certainly not going to list myself as one of these people, you're going to get more information. But I also think, and this is the major problem with injuries right now, is that the league has no injury policy. Teams are not required to discuss or publish information about their injuries, and therefore there is no, because there's no requirement, there's also no punishment if you're not being 100% forward with the information.
Right, so why would anyone be truthful about who is injured, what the timeline for their recovery is, etc., since there's no incentive to be honest, except for the fact that your fans are going to be angry with you when it turns out that you were being dishonest.
Well, and again, I don't want to use like the term dishonest because most of the time I think they're honest. They just don't give you all the information.
If you were not disclosing all the facts.
Right. And if it depends on what question you were asked, right? That always comes out. I see people and players and coaches nailed for the way that they answer questions, but I also sit there and say, what was the question asked? Like a lot of times you don't hear the question asked, right, Wendy? You just hear the response. And I find that so many times the way that the question is asked, and you're a lawyer, you know this, the way that the question is asked is how the question is answered. And yes.
Or there's also instances where, for example, I'm thinking back to the question that was posed to LA Galaxy front office regarding the trade of AJ and knowledge about Robbie, when they were asked flat out, would you have traded AJ had you known about the extent of Robbie's injuries? And instead you get this circular dance about, no, trading is tough. I was traded. I know how it feels.
Well, I mean, that's the PR side of things. I mean, you certainly understand why they.
That is a non-responsive. It's a completely non-responsive. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I think that it's a bit of a dance.
It is always a dance, and so you always have to take this. In this particular case, I'm telling you that there's no dance here. This was in fact, there's press releases on it.
Yeah, this was a medical issue, which is that this injury, Liz Frank injury, presents oftentimes as a sprain when it actually is a break.
And that's it. So there's Sebastian Lletget out 4 to 6 months. The LA Galaxy need a creative. Needs somebody to step up to be the creator because it was a lot of Sebastian Lletget in the first 3 games. And realistically for the U.S. men's national team, even in his 15 minutes that he played, he was dangerous.
Great.
And
yeah, he was wonderful.
And so you're going to need to find somebody who steps up for that. So let's go.
Obviously the answer is Giovanni Dos Santos.
Yeah, but that's always the answer.
He's ostensibly a creative player who's going to help our attack create, goals. But oftentimes when I watch him, I feel like he has played that way at times. There's definitely been games where Giovanni Dos Santos has been creative, flamboyant, compelling, all those things. But when a game turns south, and I'm thinking specifically about the first 2 games, obviously one of them he was injured in, but I do notice that players like Van Damme and Lletget, they have a sense of grit about them, which makes them dig down and they redouble their efforts. And you get Rafa Garcia has this too, although he's less talented. But just players who become more resolute when a game goes south, when you go down, which is I think it's a kind of mental discipline and psychological discipline, which like players like Steven Gerrard actually had. But I feel like Giovanni Dos Santos in those situations, I can almost feel him slipping away, slipping out of the game. And it's almost like he disappears. It's very peculiar because he is so talented, but at the same time, there's something about him that strikes me as being very youthful or immature, because there's something about him which is almost like prone to falling out of a game.
Right. No, I know what you mean. And I think that's his biggest criticism is the fact that he can disappear in games. Now, to start this season, I think it's at least been hinted to me that he was perhaps injured in the first game as well, and he's sort of been trying to push his way through this injury and play through it, basically, and it caught up to him in the second game, and obviously why he only played 45 minutes. But let's just throw all of that because we're going to get really deep into that. And by the way, Wicked One in our chat room on YouTube gave us the information. So first of all, he says that the Power Rangers are crime fighters, but then he also says they're kung fu kids with technologically advanced suits. That equals the Power Rangers. So there we go. It might be. Is it on Netflix? Can I watch Power Rangers on Netflix?
Kung Fu. So wait, are they sort of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where they do martial arts
Yes.
while they crime fight?
Yeah, less green, less shell.
Green,
yes.
Less shell.
Yes.
Same principle.
Same, but with technologically advanced. So they're a little bit of Iron Man in there, right? So there's.
Okay.
I think
Iron Man meets Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
The poor people who are writing Power Rangers.
Yelling.
I know. They're stop talking. You're ruining my childhood.
You know nothing of the Power Rangers.
All right. Let's get on to this RSL game. I know it was a long time ago, but I just want to brush over it. Mostly, just touch on a couple things that we saw because there was no Giovanni Dos Santos in this game. Jose Villarreal got the start up top, which I thought was a very poor decision. And if they're going to do that, then they should probably let everybody else know that Jose Villarreal is only like 5'3", 5'4". Because
they're trying to put long balls up to his head.
I'm like, hey, if you're gonna start him, that's great. Quite honestly, I'm not even gonna say, I'm not even gonna say it's like a bad choice. It's just like everybody else around him, like, hey, this is Jose. He's not very tall. Let's not play him.
Jose?
Yeah, let's not play balls in the air to him. All right, let's put it on the ground because that's where he's best. So if you're going to play him, that's the best thing. And he was isolated again up top there. So again, a little bit of a makeshift lineup whenever you look at it. Villarreal up top, Emmanuel Boateng, Sebastian Lletget, and Roman Alessandrini, Jones and Joao Pedro, sort of in that defensive midfield role. And then you had Romney, Diallo, Steres, and Garcia. Remember, Yellow Van Damme was suspended for this game. If we can go back and talk about another thing that was just ridiculous to start this season. So, listen, I'm going to say this now, and then I will let you argue with me if you want.
Sure.
The LA Galaxy are a second half team. They have done it in the first game. They did it in the second game. They did it in the third game. Regardless of whether they were up a man or down a man, in the second half of every single game, they have played better than the first half. And I think that's what we're starting to learn about this team, that Kurt Onalfo and the players seem to be very good at adjusting at halftime and coming out with a renewed effort. Now, that being said, where the hell are they in the first half? Because they certainly aren't playing soccer for most of the 45 minutes that they've been playing in any of the first halves that they've had. So
what do you think that says? I think that's an interesting point. I'm wondering what lessons you draw from that. What do you think it says about the team if in every game they come out in the second half much better and seem capable of trying to catch up to a team if they're behind, but they don't seem to want to grab the lead during the first half. What do you think that says about the team?
I think it says that they're young and relatively inexperienced with the people around them that they're playing with, and that they don't understand that they still have LA Galaxy and the LA Galaxy crest on their kit, and that still means that all these teams are going to come out and absolutely try to bury them. In the first 45, you're going to get every team's best 45 minutes to start with, and usually it's like 60 or 70 minutes. And that's still the case, especially I think the other teams smell blood in the water. Like, hey, the LA Galaxy are down this year.
We're weakened. We're vulnerable. We're like the hyena at the very, in the Sahara, at the very rear of the pack with like a bum ankle.
Oh, horrible.
The lioness is prowling. She's in the tall grass looking to hunt us, and we have that bum ankle. Everyone senses it.
I wish I had the nature sounds that I could, like crickets right now that would play. I have nothing. I have a sub alarm. That's it. Realistic. There it is. That's it. That's all we got. So, I think that's it. I think that's what it's saying right now. Now, I think that can change, although you look at the starting lineups from week to week and everything has changed. You've had 3 suspensions so far in the first 3 games. You've had
serious injuries. We have serious injuries.
Serious injuries all across the back line, now the midfield and up top. So you've had all that stuff. I mean, if you're looking for worst case scenario start for the LA Galaxy in terms of healthiness and having players available to play, it's been pretty much nightmare, Pandora's box sort of results for the LA Galaxy. And I think that if you're looking at that, I think if you're me, Wendy, you have to think that eventually this has to start evening out. All right. Eventually they have to start getting healthy.
That is such a Josh thing to say.
Well,
that's so Josh. That's peak Josh.
I'll tell you this, though. Here's my other thing that I've said a lot, and I say it on Twitter, and I said it as soon as Sebastian Lletget got hurt, that when, and I hear this term all the time, when the LA Galaxy get healthy, blah, 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 whatever they're going to say, whatever anybody's going to say, I'm going to say that when the LA Galaxy get healthy is never guaranteed. Getting healthy is not something that has to happen at any point during the season. All right.
Wasn't it last year? Didn't Steven Gerrard say multiple times last year, boy, I tell you, when this team is fully healthy, we are really going to start firing in all cylinders.
Lots of people did. And
so it's like, oh, fantastic. We just have to wait for everyone to be healthy. But guess what? That never happened.
Well, it's like a Rubik's Cube. You can get really close where you just have like one tile that's like really close to lining, and then you sit there for like 2 months trying to get that one tile to flip the correct color, and you can't figure out why it's not going. That's basically LA Galaxy. They're a Rubik's Cube right now. They have some of the sides are all solid. There's still some pieces missing, and they're trying to put it back together. There's no guarantee. I don't know about you, Wendy. I don't think I ever completed a Rubik's Cube, so there's no guarantee you're ever going to complete it. You can keep trying. But eventually, hopefully, somebody can complete this team and actually get people healthy and back on the field, because that's, ultimately what you're going for. And I don't know, the Sebastian Lletget injury, and outside this RSL game, I know we're trying to get there, but the Sebastian Lletget injury for me now makes a renewed focus on the summer, because the Galaxy always said that they were going to go after something they needed. And with Lletget there, they didn't necessarily need somebody in the midfield with Lletget and Jones and Pedro and Alessandrini and Boateng and, yes, you can go into Baggio, Husidic. Realistically, the deepest part of this team is in the midfield. All right.
Correct.
But
from my perspective, what we're really failing to do is generate goals. And
yes.
if in the summer we go into June or July and we're in a goal drought and absolutely no one is scoring, which is what's happening right now, then I think that we should go up for an attacker.
Yeah, and I think that's what, realistically, with the offer for Zlatan, that is technically what the Galaxy have already done, although I think they're doing that.
That is not going to happen.
I don't believe that. I'll be honest with you, and I think I've already said sort of the conditions of whether or not Zlatan will come. I still think that there's a possibility he comes to the LA Galaxy. I'm not going to say it's great, because I think that Manchester United is going to make it into the Champions League. And if they make it into the Champions League, Zlatan's not coming. That's still my balancing board for Zlatan. If Manchester United makes the Champions League, which looks like they are going to do, winning the Europa Cup, right? If they do that and get in the Champions League, then Zlatan stays with Manchester United. If they don't somehow win that and get in the Champions League, or don't finish in the top 4, I think the LA Galaxy have a realistic shot of getting Zlatan Ibrahimovic. All right? Even though listen, talks to rejoin Manchester United, Wendy, not mean. Yeah, I would expect that he's having talks, wouldn't you? That makes sense.
I'm sure that he's doing what any sensible sports agent would be doing, which is pitting teams against one another.
Bingo.
And using the leverage of having multiple offers. I'm sure he has offers from China. I'm sure he has offers from places that'll spend a lot of money. And he's saying, listen, I could go to MLS. I could go to the Chinese Super League. Manchester United, you better make me a wonderful offer, because I could go to all these different teams. That doesn't mean he's actually has in my field what we would call intent, mens rea,
right.
That he actually plans to go to the LA Galaxy. It could mean that we are, as we are customarily used, being a tool of leverage more than anything else.
Yeah, and again, I think it could easily be that. I'm just not ready to I think, the reports were out this week that basically Zlatan was in talks to stay at Manchester United.
Yes.
Well, so my response to that is, duh, of course he is. All right? I'm like, come on. Everybody panics about this.
Gotta make that money.
It relatively means nothing at this point that he's in talks to stay at Manchester United. Of course he is, and I think he wants 2 years. Now there's another factor. He's going to get 2 or 3 years with the LA Galaxy. Realistically, if they're trying to land him, they give him an extra year, even though that may not be a great idea. You give him the extra year because you want to lure the player, right? So you do that. But if Manchester United still only wants to do 1 year, which seems likely, and they're not in the Champions League, I think the LA Galaxy fall into a spot where they can offer him 2, and they could get him. So still, anyway, that goes into some of the news we're going to cover.
Okay.
But Dave Romney scored a goal. Dave Romney scored a great goal. Dave Romney is now responsible for like 50% of the LA Galaxy's goal scoring opportunities in Major League Soccer.
That should be of concern. That should be concerning.
I
Dave
think
Romney is half of our scoring.
I think that no, that shouldn't be a concern. You just need to get Dave Romney closer to the net. So I think you start him at striker. Against Vancouver.
He's a striker now.
There you go. Dave Romney converted. So anyway, Dave Romney scores, and of course, RSL killer himself, the man who stands 7 feet tall whenever he faces against Real Salt Lake. The man who weighs 250 pounds of pure muscle whenever he plays against Real Salt Lake. The man who got Jeff Cassar fired. Emmanuel Boateng scores the game winner.
I hope that it wasn't Emma Boateng's goal that got Jeff fired.
Well,
and did you see Emma's tweet after the game? It was adorable. He's like, I swear, I don't have anything against them. It's just a coincidence.
The man has scored 5 goals in his Major League Soccer career, and I believe all 5 have come against Real Salt Lake, either in the regular season or the playoffs, and however that works. So, yes, Emmanuel Boateng still continues to be my choice as MVP of the year as long as the LA Galaxy play Real Salt Lake every game for the rest of this year. Jeff Cassar fired
to them, It's like there's those voodoo players that spook a team and they're just cursed. Emma Boateng is kryptonite. He just is RSL kryptonite. They must hate him.
Well, and then you can also thank the dreadlocked one himself, Kyle Beckerman, for picking up 2 ridiculous yellow cards. And I think he earned both of them, by the way. This is not a Jelle Van Damme situation. He actually made contact, and the dissent that he got was just so ridiculous. It just carried on forever and ever. I want you to know that Jelle Van Damme got a yellow card for dissent so much faster than Kyle Beckerman. It would make your head spin, Wendy, if we actually timed him. It took Kyle Beckerman like 15 to 20 seconds to get a yellow card for dissent. It took Jelle Van Damme simply going to his head and going, "Are you kidding me?" to get a yellow card for dissent.
I think we know in this league that there are the princes and the demons and the people who are characterized as good guys and the people who are characterized as bad guys. And I think we all know certain players are deemed good guys and they will always, have the little angel's wings on their backs when it comes to being carded by referees, whereas there's other players who will always be subject to harsher discipline.
Hey, I think that Landon Donovan used to be one of those princes of the princes.
He absolutely was. But Kyle Beckerman, Darlington Nagbe. A lot of.
I think Darlington Nagbe gets the league-wide one. Kyle Beckerman's loved by his home fans. I don't know that a lot of people love Kyle Beckerman. For whatever reason.
A lot of people who liked the national team really appreciated him. I think that he was a stalwart, and he has been a great MLS player for his career. Yep. But there's definitely players who are favorites.
And I agree with that.
There's definitely favorite players, and there's definitely players who have been cast, oftentimes Spurgeon's cast, as being bad guys or, people who shouldn't be in the league, stuff like that.
Well, the Galaxy gave up a goal. Relatively speaking, the LA Galaxy have given up, I think, 1 more goal than they did through 3 games last year. Not necessarily horrible. It's a very small sample size. Not sure you can really take anything away from it. 18th minute, you're a Musician. I think if Jelle Van Damme's in this game and Bradley Diallo doesn't somehow miss the fact that he's supposed to barn door or let's see, sandwich Movsisian in that particular sense, then I think that there's some more understanding with Jelle Van Damme back there. I don't think that goal happens. So they score a goal. Obviously, LA Galaxy come back on the 69th and 74th. Again, second half team. Yes, Wendy. The LA Galaxy were playing up a man since the end of basically the first half, but they did what they were supposed to do. They came out. Nathan Smith, Jack McBean, both coming into the game, turned that game around. Nathan Smith especially being able to press up in that right-hand side. For me, Wendy, Nathan Smith has become a starter for this team at right back. That's where I put him. That's where I play him, and we have a phone call. So let's see if we can get this person on. 805, who's this?
Josh,
Scott,
your best friend.
I already, Scott, as soon as you say Josh, I already know who it is.
So I was listening.
Yes.
We were talking about villains.
Yes.
And I read a little article today from an MLS employee criticizing one of our best players, and then our best player responds like a boss. And that was awesome.
This is Matt Doyle, MLS analyst, right? And it is Jermaine Jones. You told me about this on Twitter. I have not seen it. I didn't have a chance to research it. So give me the Cliff Notes version of what was said and what the response was.
The article was we should move on from Jermaine Jones to the national team. And I don't know the lingo, but Jermaine Jones subtweeted him or did something where he was like, something like, that's so MLS or something along those lines. And I thought that was awesome. And I think it's just weird how certain MLS writers pick certain players like Darlington Nagbe to praise, where they'll go after other certain players like Jermaine Jones. I don't think there was any intent behind that article.
Right.
I just think there's this weird undertone, this weird thing where, when Darlington Nagbe is tackled, we have to get rid of Nigel de Jong and all these little weird things that, I don't know, it's just odd and it's just off-putting as a fan, and it's kind of frustrating to deal with from time to time.
Well, I mean, Scott, let's put me in this position, all right? You know that I have a great distaste for the now retired Nat Borchers, right? You know that I think he was a dirty player, that he had broken people's bones on many occasions, and he relatively went unpunished because people liked the look of his beard. All right.
They love the beard.
They love the beard. Okay, so that's my
nice beard.
That's my opinion. I think I've even written articles that have called Nat Borchers a dirty player. So
you don't work for the league.
I don't work for the league. I'm independent. But technically speaking, even Matt Doyle this is so hard. This gets into like such a gray area because of the fact that MLS has its own news source. And MLSsoccer.com is like its own news source that covers the league that they work for. So the checks are cashed from the league that they're covering. And how can that ever be impartial? So yes, I mean, you have to look at that and say, it's messed up. It's hard to even put into words about how you ever do this stuff.
It's not hard to put into words at all. You just have to use the correct words, which is that MLS is not a news source. MLSsoccer.com is not news. It is public relations and spin, and it is spun in a way that is favorable to however the league thinks is going to best capitalize or maximize its output in terms of financial revenue.
Okay.
I mean,
so
if they think it's to their advantage to cast aspersions on LA Galaxy players, to characterize certain players as good and other players as evil, then that's what they're going to do. It has nothing to do with the truth or empirical evidence or the player's performance or who they are as human beings or character. Anything like that has nothing to do with conduct or performance. It just has to do with what is advantageous to the league. MLS as a website does not proffer news. It proffers public relations, which is fine. That's a business. It's its objective. But people cannot conflate the concept of an independent news journalist, someone like Kevin Baxter, who works for the LA Times, which is an outlet completely separate and apart from the things that he reports on, versus MLS. You cannot report on your employer, okay? That would be like me going to the partners of my law firm and saying, you guys are awesome. You're the best lawyers in the whole world. I mean, that's not an impartial opinion. It's obviously, it is colored a lot by the fact that I have a vested interest in what is being said about my employer.
I agree with that. Here's my thing, though, is Matt Doyle, and I'm not defending him because I don't like the fact that there are people who are paid by the league to cover the league, that there's even the appearance of a conflict of interest, because there certainly is a conflict of interest. Absolutely. Do you think Matt Doyle runs that by somebody who runs it through MLS's PR sort of machine and says, hey, this isn't a good article because we really like this guy, or hey, this is a great article because we really don't like this guy? Hey, Scott, Wendy, Scott, go ahead. Do you think that happens?
Yeah, I don't think it might be that nefarious. I don't know. I think with someone like Nagbe, it seems like they would never criticize him regardless of what he does, and he's so inconsistent, but he's just a golden boy. I feel like if there is a young, attractive, sub-26 American player who can break into the national team and play for the World Cup and draw the eyes of NFL and NBA fans, then MLS Soccer can do everything they can to make that person look as good as possible. Nagbe, Lletget, somebody along those lines. But I don't know. It seems like, back to Wendy's point, maybe why wouldn't they want De Jong in the league? If they do make him out to a villain, keep him in the league. That can kind of draw interest in the same way that Jones somehow is not really a villain, but is somewhat criticized. It's just weird I'm not sure what they're trying to do, but I feel like they're trying to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. Listen, I certainly can't explain Nigel de Jong not being on the LA Galaxy anymore. In fact, if you look at the preview that was put up, Steven wrote it, and I put the picture up to it, and I was having trouble finding a picture that was against Vancouver that we have ownership of, because I have certain photos that I have ownership of that I couldn't put up without like Nigel de Jong being in it. And I was like, you know what? Nigel de Jong's going in this. And everybody can remember that he was on the LA Galaxy last year on the July 4th game against Vancouver, and that, realistically, he should still be on this team. Now, whether or not that even makes sense for the Galaxy in terms of designated player, maybe it really was the Galaxy who got rid of. We don't know the answer to that. I have this feeling, and basically I told you what I think.
Some of us have a good idea. I think some of us.
Well, I'm the one who said that idea. Yeah. So I'm just.
I also don't think it is so nefarious that Matt Doyle would ever have to run his articles beyond people who are his higher ups in the league. To me, that does not. I think that the respondeat superior relationship, the employer-employee relationship, is sufficient that an employee who understands that he has a vested interest in maintaining his employment and his income is going to color whatever he writes so that it is going to be what his supervisors want. I mean, when I write legal briefs, I write them to benefit my client, understanding that that is what my job is. I have to write things in such a way so that my arguments are persuasive, so that people believe what I have to say, so that my client's case is won, and that's what I get paid for. I don't get paid for saying what is objectively actually, the entire truth among a universe of facts.
Right.
So I think that it's just he understands, like, this is what part of my job, and like this is what I do.
I mean, but ultimately, whenever any reporter, and granted, it gets colored differently, and I agree with that. I don't like the fact that NFL.com has reporters, or and Major League Baseball.com has reporters. It seems like all these leagues have their own reporters.
But in the universe of like NFL and NBA, there's a huge media empire that covers them, whereas that's the outlier with soccer. MLS it's still a niche sport. It still is. No one in my law firm even knows anything about soccer. And it's still because it's a relatively niche sport, which means that a huge percentage of the media is under the control or auspices of MLS. And so in order to get real reportage, you have to, there's so few people, there's so few Kevin Baxters out there. There's so few people, Grant Wall, Jeff Carlisle, I could probably name them on two hands, the number of people who actually report on soccer in a neutral way.
Brian Strauss. I'm trying to go through. I know there's
there's a whole bunch of them.
Right.
There's some wonderful podcasts. Don't get me wrong. We have this podcast, and there's a ton. Total Soccer Show. There's a bunch of podcasts that are wonderful, but in terms of reporting that you can read about in media, there's not a ton of outlets. American Soccer Now is really good, actually, that I write for. But I mean, there's a ton of outlets. A lot of them are really, truly neutral.
No, and that's what you always have to look at. Listen, here at the Corner of the Galaxy, we do not get paid by anybody. Actually, I really wish that we did get paid by somebody.
That.
Yeah, exactly. Wendy gets paid exactly as much as I do, which is nothing, and we do it. And I did it because I saw that there was a lack of independent coverage of the LA Galaxy. And I think that this year we've taken an even greater step at being independent with having Kevin Baxter come on. And realistically, there is no reason for us to shade anything that we have to say on this. I don't think Wendy does, and I certainly don't. That may have been me at the beginning whenever I first started the podcast, where I was worried about somebody yelling at me or stuff like that. Guess what? I don't care. People can yell at me and get all upset all they want. I still have to report and look at players in the eye. So whenever I say something, I have to believe it.
That's the hard thing, is that people attack you sometimes. They attack you for being too positive and having too sunny a disposition. They attack me because they think I'm sort of like some sort of witch or shrew. Like I'm out to castrate the team and disembowel them. Like they have a whole Machiavellian sense of who the both of us are. But the truth is that Josh is genuinely just a happier, more sunny person who has a more positive general outlook of what is going to happen. Whereas I am by nature skeptical. I mean, it serves me well in my professional life that I think about things and I really try to be as skeptical and critical as possible. And that's also just it's an endemic component to like who I am.
Right. All right. So anyway, let's go. I agree. Hey, if you want to call in, listen, then now's the time to do it. All right. I'm telling you right now. 949-385-2641. 949-385-2641 as I try to get through LA Galaxy team news before anybody calls. All right. We already know about the U.S. men's national team in terms of Sebastian Lletget went 18 minutes, got injured. He's out 4 to 6 months. Now we know that Jones went 75 minutes in the game against Panama. That game was on Tuesday night. And Tuesday night? Yeah, Tuesday night. And so now this means that basically whether or not Jermaine Jones will be 100% available for the LA Galaxy is a little bit of a question mark just because it was hot, it was humid. He's 35 years old. He has to go up into Vancouver and play on turf. I will tell you in a little bit whether or not, this is a cliffhanger, this is a tease, I will tell you in a little bit whether or not I think Jermaine Jones is starting for the LA Galaxy or not. One thing I wanted to talk about that we already talked about, Zlatan in talks, we already said that, to remain a Manchester United player, and I've said that doesn't change things, Wendy, and he's doing exactly what he's expected to do. This isn't a surprise.
Of course. Listen, if you're a 35-year-old and you're not going to have a profession beyond the age of 38, what person would not be trying to maximize the amount of money that they're going to make, right?
Got to cash those checks. Zlatan knows. Zlatan understands.
Make that money.
That's right. So the other thing is the LA Galaxy announced, and something we didn't get to, but the LA Galaxy announced that they're going to host Manchester United at StubHub Center. That's kind of cool because I've always loved the games where they've hosted the big teams at the smaller venue at StubHub Center, not the Rose Bowl, because I hate the Rose Bowl. I'm the guy in Southern California who hates the Rose Bowl. There's some of us. There aren't that many of us, but I hate the Rose Bowl and I hate going up there for games. And so I don't want to go up there. So at StubHub Center, much happier. But they're going to play that game on Saturday, July 15th. I have a couple real quick thoughts on this, Wendy, and we're going to keep it tight because we got like 12 minutes and we still going to get maybe some phone calls and also preview that game against Vancouver. But here is some things that's going to happen. A lot of times teams agree to play friendlies. Whenever David Beckham came, that type of thing, that, there's a friendly deal involved. When Robbie Keane came, there's a friendly deal involved. It seems that whenever players come, that there's usually a friendly deal involved. And so people have asked, does this mean that Zlatan is coming to the LA Galaxy because the Galaxy will host Manchester United on July 15th? And my answer to that is, well, what's your answer?
No.
Okay, that seems correct. Okay, so we're on the same thing there. Season ticket holders are going to get a discount, but it's not included in their season. Boo. I wonder, and this is my wondering because I remember getting these surveys, Wendy. I don't know, you're a season ticket holder, you get them too, but do you remember getting surveys that ask about like bonus games and like friendlies and different things like that?
I always complain about the food and the parking. The only things in all the years, right. I always just write, I want better food, I want better parking. That's it. I ignore everything. And they have actually this year, I would like to give some props to someone at the LA Galaxy. There are more options for food this year at the StubHub Center.
You do?
I have circulated. Christian can attest to this. The first game, I made him walk around to all the stalls within the StubHub Center, and I was like, let's check out all the options for every menu item. So I investigated, and I can tell you, there are more options this year for food.
And you only have to take out a second mortgage on your house in order to afford that food. And if you're getting 2 beers, just get a credit card that has like a $25,000 credit limit. That's my suggestion.
Get it on the layaway if you're going to get 2 beers.
That's the way, at most stadiums, that's the way it is. There's very few exceptions where the pricing at stadiums is anywhere near reasonable. So, I mean, it's certainly a complaint that I think people are reasonable to complain about, and the prices are ridiculous for food anywhere. In a stadium, and particularly at StubHub Center, I think that's absolutely valid. The season ticket holders not getting this as part of their package, like I said, the only thing I can think of in the surveys that they sent out were asking, what do you think about preseason friendly or mid-season friendlies? Do you want that as part of your thing? Do you not want that as part of your thing? How do you want to do this? How do you want to do that? And that type of thing. And I wonder if they got enough respondents that said, hey, nope, we don't like to go to these friendlies. They're not fun for us. We don't like them, blah, 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 the whole deal. And that's how it goes. So I wonder if that is possibly the way. And I would love to get your thoughts on it, Wendy, but we have a phone call instead. So 661, who's this?
Ronell from the Central Valley.
Ronell, my friend, it's been a little while. Thanks for calling in. How are we doing?
Good.
All right, what do you got?
I've been watching a lot of MLS, and especially Atlanta United.
Okay.
And I look at their players. There's a lot of combo play, fast wingers,
right?
Burn players.
Right.
I don't see that with the Galaxy attack.
Yeah.
Not from Romain. I don't see it as. I mean, we can't just rely on one person.
No, you can't rely on, and I think that Giovanni Dos Santos has speed. I think Ramon Alessandrini, he's quick, not necessarily fast. Yes, there's a difference. We don't need to get into this. We've gone over it for like the past 5 years on this podcast. Ronald's like, listen, I've listened to this. I know. So he's quick, not necessarily fast. Emma Boateng's fast. He's one of the guys that can do it for you.
I think what he might be referring to is the fact that Atlanta United has a lot of technical, creative, quick players, not fast as
exactly
speed. Yes, like I actually have also watched Atlanta this year. I think they're going to be very good. Well, I think they're being coached well, and they have some talented players. I'm telling you right now, there's not a lot of teams first year in the league that make the playoffs. I'm telling you, prediction. Oh, yeah. Right now, Atlanta makes the playoffs.
First of all, let's just say that you're not going out on a limb saying that. Almost half the teams in Major League Soccer make the playoffs, Wendy, so you're already...
An expansion team in their first year. Let me tell you, Minnesota's not making the playoffs.
Minnesota will be lucky if they don't get relegated. They'll be the first team ever to get relegated from Major League Soccer, all right? They're not ready to play, and that's clear. That's the good news for LA Galaxy fans. If you were worried about the LA Galaxy finishing last, I think Minnesota United's going to wrap that up, so don't worry about that. I'll tell you what Atlanta's doing, Ronell. They are making people pay attention. I was listening to some experts talk about Atlanta United and realistically what they have done. And they're saying if Atlanta United spending money, yes, they're getting young players. Yes, they're spending money on transfer fees, but there's probably a secondary market they're looking at here as well. And I think it's the same thing as sort of the LA Galaxy in a much lesser degree, and I'll admit it's a lesser degree, getting Joao Pedro, is you're getting a 23-year-old. And if you do it right and you get the right players and you get these 21, 22, 23-year-olds who are good and they start to appreciate as assets, you can sell them in 3 years.
Speculative. That is speculative investing. Do you think Joao Pedro is going to prove to have secondary value in terms of reselling him based on how he's performing for the LA Galaxy so far?
In 3 games, no.
Exactly.
Yeah, in 3 games, no. And I said to a much lesser extent, by the way. In 3 games, no. Now, what does he end up being at the end of the season? I have no idea. And what does he end up being at the second year and the next year in his contract?
That's true. I'm saying, I think based on 3 games, it's really impossible to draw conclusions. Losing the way we did in those bizarro first 2 games and then beating a team that's almost at the bottom of the league when they're down to 10 men. What can you draw from that?
Well, you can't draw. Listen, the LA Galaxy have played 90 minutes like with 11v11, and the other 2 games they have either been up a man or down a man. It's a lot like Vancouver, which we're going to start talking about, Ronald. But listen, I understand what you're saying is that, listen, Atlanta's doing one of these, paradigm shifts. And if it works, which, by the way, it looks like it's working, if it ends up working, everybody else is going to copy them. And that includes the LA Galaxy. And if you're mad that the LA Galaxy weren't first on the foot in order to do this, then you can be mad at that. I think there's a lot of fan bases right now mad, especially Minnesota United fans, who are sitting there going, why can't we be like Atlanta? And for a lot of teams, especially teams like the LA Galaxy, like, the Seattle DC United, Seattle Sounders, DC United maybe gets a pass because they're building the stadium. But all these things, the answer is you should be mad because your team theoretically could have thought of this. All right, Ronald, anything else?
That's it. I just missed the 2014 LA Galaxy.
Yeah,
Hey, I missed the 2011 LA Galaxy. I missed the 2009 LA Galaxy. All right.
I missed 2014. That was my favorite.
2011.
You guys take care.
Thanks, Ronell. I'll talk to you later, buddy. All right. Ronell goes. All right. So I'm telling you right now, Wendy, we're going long. So just,
Josh, okay, this happens every single time we podcast, which is that you somehow in the back of your mind are concerned that we're not going to have enough to talk about. And at the end of every show, you're like, we did not get to everything I wanted to talk about. And I always tell you, Josh, if you're talking to me, believe me, there's no shortage of places for this conversation to go.
That's right. It's realistically, that is how it goes. And by the way, that happens to all of my shows. Whenever I do, every time I get ready to record with Kevin Baxter, I go, okay, we have basically less than 30 minutes of stuff to talk about. So let's just try to get it to 30 minutes. And then at 53 minutes, whenever I hit the stop record, I go, oh, that was a good show. And he's like, how did you think we didn't have it? So it always works out. And the calls help, obviously, and all that stuff goes as well. But let's get to Vancouver just a little bit here. This is a team.
Fortunate for the LA Galaxy, another team not doing well.
Well, not doing well, and they've had the worst end of not being able to play with 11 players because twice in 3 games they have not finished the game with 11 players on the field. They realistically lost to San Jose after being up 2-0, and San Jose came back 3-2 because David Osted, their goalkeeper, was red carded. That basically led directly to San Jose's coming back and scoring all those goals. They drew with Philadelphia, the very first game, the only game they actually got to keep 11 players on the field at BC Place. And then their most recent game, a loss to Toronto FC, was 0-0 in the 70th minute when Brek Shea said something horrible to a referee. And you know it's horrible because the referee stares at him and goes, "I can't believe you just said that to me." Like, really? It's humorous. If you haven't seen Brek Shea's red card, you need to go see it. But they lost to Toronto FC 2-0 after Brek Shea got red carded. So if you're a Brek Shea fan, you're not going to see him against the LA Galaxy. The disciplinary committee didn't see a reason to overturn that one. They're shocking surprise. So you have a team in Vancouver, Wendy, that realistically we can draw almost no conclusions about because we have no idea what it
Well, they're like us. We've had these. I mean, I really feel like the first two games that we went to at the LA Galaxy at the StubHub Center, I felt like they were both peculiar games, especially the second one. And then the game against RSL also, like, this bizarre lineup with Villarreal as a striker, and I was so confused, and I'm like, Cardinalfo is doing some radical drugs if he is coming up with the lineups that were like Villarreal is going to get headers, and then, we have, left backs as right backs, and Lletget is pulling back to play right. It's just so bizarre that I'm like, this can't be actually a predictor of how we're going to perform because it's too strange. We have to get like a normal lineup to see what the team actually is.
Yeah, and realistically, besides the game against FC Dallas, where the LA Galaxy again played much better in the second half than Dallas, it was an exciting game. I thought that they could have scored.
That was a fun game. I actually thought it was a fun game, and thinking about it, it was weird, but I liked it.
It was a weird game, but it was a good game. And then you look at Portland and having to play down a guy, but even down a guy, you pressure Portland extremely in the second half. A game you could have stolen a point from, and realistically, it would have been stealing a point, playing down a player. For that long. And then you go to the game against RSL, and what happened should have happened, but you looked at the first half, and RSL, I think, was the better team. They created more chances, and then you got sort of the readjustment. Kyle Beckerman gets sent off, and then you have the LA Galaxy come out in the second half and put the pedal down. I would like...
Yeah, and I thought you said something really, really interesting, actually, about the RSL game. You sent out a tweet that was something to the effect of, this is a team where you cannot pull your foot off the gas.
Yeah.
Because we have all these problems, the only way to get a result is to push hard for the entire game, which I think you're correct about, but that would be so physically exhausting. So exhausting for the team to have to perform that way that I don't know how long they actually can do it, because I've seen Alessandrini at these games, and let me tell you, he is a good player. I don't know how long he can play this way with, like, pushing himself super duper hard for 90 minutes in order to compensate for so much of what else is going on in the field.
No, and I think that he's going to have to learn, to pace himself. And it's about the Galaxy.
Wiped. He just looks wiped at the end of the game.
He and granted, I love that about him. It seems like he leaves it all on the field. All right, we've got another call, and we're going to take it because, you know what, we're going to hang around for a little bit, and that's fine. All right, 310, who's this?
Hey, it's me, Josh.
Hey, David. How's it going, buddy? Davis?
Hey, it's going well.
What do you got?
So how's everything going?
We're hanging in. We're hanging in. The show is starting to wrap up. We're just getting ready to preview Vancouver, but I wanted to talk about you because here we had you writing an article about Sebastian Lletget, and Davis writes for Corner of the Galaxy. He's our youngest writer. How old are you now, Davis?
Honestly, some things I wanted to start with. Number one, I am honestly so saddened to see Lletget out on the bench. I mean, injured, my bad.
Right.
And I really am. And what impact do you think he's gonna, the loss of Lletget is gonna have on this team?
Yeah. All right, Davis. We're gonna let you go, and we'll answer the question here. But no, I mean, I think we've said it, Wendy. I don't know that you could have taken a player.
No. You can't. There's no other than Van Dam. There's no one else you could have taken away who is more impactful to LA Galaxy.
Yeah, and that realistically comes down, and that's going to be felt in this Vancouver lineup and what the LA Galaxy are going to have to do in order to put out a competitive lineup. Now, here is the good news for you, Wendy, and here we go as the LA Galaxy get ready to face off against Vancouver on Saturday night at 7 p.m. The game can be found on Spectrum Sportsnet and Spectrum Deportes. Deportes. That's where you can find all of the live coverage, and I believe there might even start a little bit before 7 p.m., so you might want to catch that. The LA Galaxy hosting a viewing party at StubHub Center at the Stadium Club. So if you're in town for that, you might have to RSVP to it. Go to lagalaxy.com and figure that out if you want to go. I think that's cool that they're doing that. I hope they continue to do that, and I will be there at one of these in the future if they continue to do it. I can't be there this weekend, but I will try for another one in the future. But anyway, so we get to Vancouver. You look at all these things. You look at the lineup and the players that are available. Here are the players that are available. Ashley Cole, full training, will be available for the LA Galaxy. I expect him to start and be in the 18 at the very least. Ashley Cole is going to start. I'm positive about this one. I'm feeling good about it. All right, let's go with you're going to get Steres and Van Dam. Van Dam's back for suspension. That's good news, Wendy. You're going to get the captain back and put him back in his rightful spot there. For me, if I'm Kurt Arnolfo now and you have your right back position, because you now have a solid left back position, you have a right back position, a position that Rafa Garcia has played throughout this year, but Nathan Smith did such a wonderful job against Real Salt Lake, I have to put Nathan Smith in at right back. I'm ready. Just let's throw him. Let's put him in the deep end. He's a starter now. Congratulations, Nathan Smith. You're now an LA Galaxy senior team right back. And Rafa Garcia, thank you for trying. Thank you for playing. Thank you for doing all these things that you did, because it's not you. You're a midfielder. Go be a midfielder again, and be a defensive midfielder and be somebody who can come off the bench for the LA Galaxy, because I think that's where he's best used. But for me, it's Nathan Smith. Any arguments?
No, I'm perfectly willing to try that. I mean,
Yeah, but you're like
what the heck? Why not?
You're like spaghetti now. You're just gonna stick it and throw it against the fence and see if it works.
Real right back. Let's just throw it. Let's just throw someone on and see how they do.
I think Smith, even though he's technically is sort of trained as a left back, he's actually both positions and has played, I think, both positions even for the youth national teams whenever he's played. So Smith for me is one of those guys who you can make a right back because he plays both. So I'm happy with that. You got to get Boateng into this game because you don't have Sebastian Lletget, so you need some speed. You need
Boateng
some
on the wing.
That's easy. Alessandrini on the opposite wing.
Yeah.
All right. And here
Jones in the middle.
So do you think Jones is going to play?
I think he will, especially since Matt Doyle published this article questioning
he's definitely
his
playing.
age, his value, and he subtweets this. I think he's going to be like, no, I am going to start this game. I'm going to go to Vancouver. I'm going to show, because he has that sense about him that, he is reluctant to concede that he is an aging athlete. This macho crapola that men have, which is like, no, I'm not aging. I think it's gonna play into it, and he's gonna play.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think Jermaine Jones has to play. Quite honestly, you need a creative. We were talking about creatives. He is a creative for the LA Galaxy. He is a guy in the midfield who can get forward and put the ball to people. So you need him playing in this game. So for me, Jermaine Jones is playing, and then you simply have to decide who you want to play with Giovanni Dos Santos, because I think Giovanni Dos Santos will play and will start in this game. Are you going to risk Giassi Zardes, who hasn't played since August, realistically, hasn't been in a game of any sort of real competition since August 27th when he went out playing against the Vancouver Whitecaps? Do you play Giassi Zardes in this game? Do you let him start, or do you bring him in off the bench? Because those are going to be your choices. He is going to be available for this game.
Oh, God. I just want to know how healthy he really is. I'm so scared of re-injuring him. I'm just terrified of this whole situation. I guess bring him off the bench then.
Okay, so I think we're in agreement. Let's bring Giassi Zardes off the bench. And realistically, when you look at it, he has to be healthy at this point. They've had the chance to rest him. Realistically, you're not going to play him on carpet in Vancouver if he's not ready. He was very close to traveling and being available for that Real Salt Lake game. I'll give you that. He's now had a further 2 weeks, basically, since that game to get even more fit and more healthy. So I think the fact that he was borderline really, really, really close to getting on the plane with RSL, and now the fact that he's had 2 more weeks, the 2 more weeks is huge, in my opinion. And I would, if it was me, I think I might even start him, but I understand that he hasn't played so long. I want to rest him. So I'm going to get him off the bench. You put Jack McBean, not Jose Villarreal, who's 3 feet tall. And then that way you can get the ball up to Jack McBean. And listen, Giovanni Dos Santos, if he's healthy, if he is the guy, he needs to be the guy who stays close to Jack McBean, because those two can create off each other. When that happens, the LA Galaxy have an actual offense going for them. All right, and it's happened a couple times where we've seen good combinations. So you can play the ball to Jack McBean's head. You can play it in the air, Wendy. You don't have to play it on the ground, or you can play it in the ground. Jermaine Jones is going to be huge in this game. The Vancouver Whitecaps actually just made a trade as well, sending Kakuna Mane to Columbus, and Columbus trades them Tony Chani. All right, and they got there's a whole bunch of cash that changes hands.
What did we get for AJ, by the way?
Yeah, I know. That's what everybody was saying, and I looked at the trade. They got a player and the cash, basically.
We are idiots, really. Honestly,
I'm not.
What we're thinking.
I'm not. I didn't make the trade.
I know, but the whole thing, like, what are we doing with that? Like,
well, this just leads me more to the fact that I look and say, okay, so what was it about AJ's contract that was going to be so that was going to tie everybody's hands next year?
Nothing.
No, I don't know that. I don't know that it doesn't increase by $40,000 or $50,000 a year.
Oh, come on. No, it does not. Come on. Can't we just say, listen, in the scope of coaches' decision making, coaches make bad decisions and good decisions. Bruce Arena did it too. People think Bruce was infallible? Absolutely not. Remember when he brought in Edson Buttle for his last stand? Remember Mika Varanen? Okay, he brought in guys who did not pan out. Okay, every coach makes decisions where it turns out to be a bad decision in retrospect, and that is, you just have to make sure that whatever the amount of good decisions you make, they completely outweigh the number of bad decisions. So we will have to weigh on balance as the season progresses whether we think on balance that the decision to trade AJ is mitigated by any other decisions that are made by the club. Because no one could say anything to me. You could tell me that AJ has the corpse of a body in his basement. I still don't know if I would think it was a good trade.
I don't know. I think in that particular case, maybe it would be, Wendy.
What he could have done to the team. The decision making is baffling.
Well, I mean, if they eventually find out he's going to go to jail, and then, then you don't have him at all. I think the best thing is to trade him and then get the money. I mean,
it has to be something like people hated him or something like that, because there isn't an empirical reason to make that decision.
Yeah, I haven't found one yet. That's why I keep scratching my head and saying, is there something? It's as by my nature.
No, he did something. He must have done something terrible to someone.
I don't think that's in his nature.
Although he's so nice. How could he have done that?
Although if he has a basement in Houston, I'm going to ask people. That might be.
I don't know. He's the nicest player in the world, and I'm still so sad we traded him.
I know. I knew we wouldn't get through this podcast without him being
I'll let it. Listen, just give me some time.
It happened a long time ago.
No, it didn't happen. It still feels fresh.
This is going to be you in like 2019. You're going to be thinking back. It's like, it's too soon.
I had a conversation with my boyfriend where I said, I wonder if my dying thought is going to be, but why did they trade AJ?
I hope that you have other things on your mind. I mean,
me too. I really do. I really hope that this doesn't have a lasting impact on me.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, my dying thought will be, I wonder if AJ has bodies in his basement now.
He doesn't, I promise.
Okay, well, I don't know if you can't throw that curveball at me and then to expect me not to be.
I'm just saying that it can't be based on his performance. It can't be based on his history as a player. It can't be based on his talent. It can't be based on his ability. It can't be based on what he's contributed to the team. And I don't think it's even based on his salary with what he was earning, $220 or something like that, when Robbie Rogers earns more and is not even as good a player.
But they earn the same.
I can't wrap my mind around it in terms of a decision that's based on something which is related to the sport.
Well, I mean, again, you talk about good decisions and bad decisions. I go back all the way to Bruce Arena whenever he decided AJ De La Garza wasn't a starter last year, in terms of, one of those things that I sit there and go, that opened the door for all of this to happen. All right. Yeah. And so that still gets me a little perplexed. And obviously I wrote articles and made the argument that your defense is better with AJ. So that's simple. All right. Vancouver game. Give me a score, Wendy, that's sure to go wrong. You won't be here to get any of the wrath, because you will be in Germany seeing some Bundesliga games.
I am going to be in Germany, so the wrath can be directed at Josh.
That's right. Go ahead.
I will predict. What the heck? I am going to predict an LA Galaxy win.
I like it. I like 2 wins on the road. I did leave out.
And then you know what? That's going to be my prediction. I'm going to predict we're going to win on the road and lose at home.
That's not horrible. If you win a couple home games and you win all your road games, you could do okay.
thing. Maybe that'll be our thing this season. Is that we're the road team.
Hey, Portland didn't win a game on the road all last year. So yeah, I think the LA Galaxy, it could very well be that team. This is going to be an interesting game. I think that realistically, the LA Galaxy will put a lineup that is fairly competitive and fairly healthy. Sebastian Lletget's not going to be there, but everybody else should be. You look at what Vancouver is doing in Vancouver. There's a couple things that obviously we haven't mentioned yet, and the most important one is that Vancouver has a Champions League game on April 5th. Where they're down 2-0 to Tigres, and they have to basically defend their home, BC Place, against Tigres on Wednesday coming up. So they're going to be looking perhaps at resting some players because if they have any hopes of progressing in the CONCACAF Champions League, they're going to have to focus on that. Or do they think that there's no possible way they can score 2 goals against Tigres at home to extend that, or even 3 goals at home to win that, and so they don't even try for that game and they focus. I think Carl Robinson has some things to decide here about how he wants to go after this game, and the most important part of this game that you're not going to probably get from anywhere else, Wendy, the most important piece of information you need to know when picking a game, and you already picked them to win, so I hope this information doesn't change your mind. The LA Galaxy will be debuting their newest blue-on-blue kit in Vancouver. There you go. I knew that was going to scare you a little bit.
The blue curse.
Exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
But you know me, Josh. You know I don't believe in the blue curse.
What kind of crap is that you believe in every conspiracy theory that has ever been affected the LA Galaxy, but you don't believe them?
Not every conspiracy theory, and I don't believe in the blue kit curse because, frankly, I like the blue kits. I think I look better in blue. That's why I buy them.
Which is why everybody buys them, because the blue kit is better looking.
The blue kit is tastier. It is prettier.
Prettier. I agree with that. It is. I like tastier better. It is
well,
a tastier
if you're a lady,
kit.
if you're a fair-haired maiden like myself,
right,
with particularly a fair complexion or blonde hair, that blue is going to set off your eyes just nicely. So that's why I get the blue kit.
I'm pigmentally challenged, which is why I get the blue kit. There's some good contrast there, so that's how that works. All right, the LA Galaxy face off against the Vancouver Whitecaps at 7 p.m. on Saturday. Spectrum Sportsnet, Spectrum Deportes, and for me, I am also picking the LA Galaxy to win this game 2-1 over the Vancouver Whitecaps. Goals from Giovanni Dos Santos and Roman Alessandrini. There are your choices. There's any goal choices. You want to pick out one person who scores a goal, Wendy?
Yeah, I'm going to say
Sebastian Lletget.
I'm going to say Jack McBean scores his goal.
I like it. That could happen. 1-0. Steal some more points on the road. All right. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else, Wendy? You have to say goodbye to everybody, so you do that and tell people where they can find you.
Auf Wiedersehen, everyone. I will be in Germany, but in the meantime, you can find me at cornerthegalaxy.com on American Soccer Now and on Twitter at Bards Blonde.
All right, and if you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at Guesman, at JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. That's me 95.9% of the time, giving you all the LA Galaxy news I can possibly muster in between doing an actual real job as well. So please head on over to Corner of the Galaxy, follow all that stuff there, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, follow us on iTunes, SoundCloud, any of those places. Go subscribe to these things, subscribe on YouTube as well. We have a bunch still to cover coming up next week. Kevin Baxter will be back joining us on Monday. Hopeful to have a podcast for you Wednesday night, not Thursday night, because the game is on Friday night. So we're going to record on Wednesday night, all right? I'm changing it up on you, and you're very welcome for that. So pay attention. Wednesday night, LA Galaxy will be talked about right here on Corner of the Galaxy in the live show. All right, for Miss Wendy Thomas heading off to Germany, I'm Josh Guesman heading off to bed. You've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. And for all of your independent LA Galaxy news, discussion, and entertainment, including this podcast, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. Fans, thanks for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.